So I don't know if you know, but there's a 30-page document. I've just been skimming through it on the Welcome to the Rebellion. So you've got this big sort of information dump, basically, that you're going to give people. And I'm not entirely sure how we should go about it, but I was going to make one or two initial points, which is, first of all, like Daniel was just saying, like you've got a way of communicating things, and you have to. Step one is to know really clearly what you're communicating, and then step two is to engage with it with your personality and your passion and your emotion. So we were just talking about the St. Ives talk that I did, which 100,000 people watched or something dramatic. And people always say, "Oh, that was really good, Roger." But the first one I did was really shit. Like, and by the time I got to Penzance, I'd actually given that talk something like 10 times in 3 weeks. So by that time, I was just like banging it out, right? So what the first thing to sort of mutually acknowledge here is, the first time you're going to do the Welcome to the Rebellion, talk, you're just going to be a bit like a 16-year-old sort of reading out some, from a novel or something in class. You know what I mean? It's just going to be, yeah, well, there's this and there's this and there's this. But once you've learned it, obviously you can animate it a little bit more. So that's the thing to say, I guess, about it. The other thing I'm aware of is the issue with this Welcome to Rebellion thing is not so much what you say, but then what you get asked, because you're going to get asked a whole bunch of tricky questions, many of which are going to be quite legitimate, right? Because you're challenging a whole bunch of perceived ideas about how to go about stuff. So for instance, like, why do we have to have structure? What's all this about non-violence? What's this about leadership? There's a number of trigger points here in the talk. So, this isn't impossible to deal with, of course. It's just a matter of knowing what the points are. Citizen assembly, why citizen assembly? It's quite a difficult sell, citizen assembly. But once people get it, they love it, right? But it's so, let's not like overly panic about convincing everyone, as you might say. The main thing is to go through it, and obviously 80% of people will be reasonably open to it. The other thing I'm worried about, to be honest with you, is it's a bit like you have your first chapter meeting, and then it's a bit like, hey, you need to sort of go to 10 Bible classes before you can do anything. That's not really going to be that great. So I increasingly think, particularly in the atmosphere of people wanting to get out and do things, I think it's really good for it to be happening at the same time as something that actually involves action. Because my intuition is that if you say to your 10 people, right, we're going to have a 4-hour go through all this stuff, by the end of it, there'll only be 4 of them left. So it might be better to go, hey guys, let's go out and have a picnic, or let's go out and here's the menu of, the 3 minute in a row. And after that, after you've done the action, you start doing the theory. So that's, a lot of people think it should be the other way around. You learn something and then you go and do it. No, that's actually psychologically not very smart. If you want to get people on the go, you go and do it first, and then you learn how to do it. It's really weird, but it's true. Take it from me. It's one of those few things I'm really clear about. Anyway, so that's just to give a little bit of a roundabout feel about it. So we'll do the same. So let's not like panic. We're going to go through it all today. Just give ourselves a little bit of a flavour of the sort of things we're saying. We'll just see how far we get. And at the end of it, we can decide whether we do, maybe next week we do questions on it or something. That, when someone asks me this, what do I do? That sort of thing, All right, so we'll just, if that's okay with everyone, obviously, again, feel free to, a few of you have been emailing me saying, this is rubbish or something. That's good. Just give me the worst, that's fine. You can always get rid of me. and then you know, we can mess around with it a little bit. Yeah, is that okay with everyone? So I'm going to do that routine where I start with Daniel, then go to Tatiana, and basically no one escapes. Everyone's going to do a little bit. All right. So I'm going to. Hopefully, I can share the screen. Oh no, I can't.
Oh, I can give you sharing permissions. 1 second.
What
So
I might do is just give everyone a minute to read a section, and then someone can summarize it.
you should be able
Yeah,
to share now.
great. Okay, so I don't know if you've seen all this.
I see that, yeah. I see the first
Yeah,
paragraph,
you can
yeah.
see it, yeah. Yeah, welcome to the rebellion. So this is great. Michelle's done a great job. She's actually bunged it all together. And it's really good because I was a little bit worried that you know, it's a bit like, oh, do welcome to the rebellion, you know, and you go, you've got 15 minutes and civil disobedience. You're thinking, oh my God, what do I need to say? So basically this tells you what to say. And Nick, you can do your little side bit on Gene Sharp, by the way. So I'll get you to the civil disobedience bit. All right, so I'm going to choose some of the little bit more complicated bits. Everyone can read it, and then Daniel, you can, you know, spend 3 or 4 minutes going through some aspects of it. So we've got the introductory session. The other thing I was going to say is this golden rule, which everyone should know now, is only 50% of any training should be you rambling on. The rest of it should be people doing exercises, right? And it's really, really easy to forget that rule. It's a bit like, I'm really important. I've got a load of important things to say. I can't be faffing around with people doing little exercises. Couldn't make a bigger mistake. People learn through doing the exercises, and they always start falling asleep anyway if you talk too much. So I think there's some terrible stat that if you talk to people for more than 5 minutes, about 60 or 70% of them don't start thinking about what they're having for dinner. So that's where we are. Okay, so I think where we came from, that's pretty straightforward, right? Okay, let's start with something simple, right? So I'm going to, Daniel, you can just spend 2 or 3 minutes explaining the demands, okay? So again, don't worry about it getting it all nice and shiny or whatever, anything, yeah? I'll just let everyone read them. So everyone can see them. So I'll give everyone a minute. Well, a few, yeah, it's not that much, just so everyone can read them. Okay, Daniel, so you have a go at explaining them.
Sure.
Starting from now, off you go.
Okay, so in Extinction Rebellion, we have very clear demands, right? So when we do our civil disobedience campaign, it's with a purpose and an objective. And we're very clear with the government what we're intending, the change that we're intending to create. So the first demand, before we do anything else, is that the government has to tell the truth, because we've been lied to for a very long time. So the idea is that in order to address the situation, the government has to be on the same page as the scientists, because it just hasn't been working for the government to be basically putting out a message implicitly or explicitly that everything's fine, we're going to be able to continue on as usual. So the first demand is that the government tell the truth. We're facing catastrophic collapse situation in the coming decades, and our children are not going to be facing a survivable future if we don't do something drastic. So the second demand that we have is that we need to act now, which means that we can't be kicking the can down the road. We can't be leaving this for the people who come after. We need to be drawing down carbon emissions now as rapidly as possible. And the date that we've set for a zero carbon emission economy is 2025. And the reaction that you'll get from a lot of people is, oh, come on, this is unrealistic. But the truth is, and this is related to the first demand, if we tell the truth, any other option is unrealistic if we have any investment in the continuation of our species on this planet. So the third demand is about how we're going to address the situation. How are we going to get to zero carbon emissions by 2025? And the answer that Extinction Rebellion has come up for that is to create a citizens' assembly, or a series of citizens' assemblies to address the situation. And what that means is that we take a random selection of the population based on demographics. So it's an accurate reflection of our population on the ground. These people are going to be told the truth about the situation. They're going to be collaborating with a series of experts and scientists, and they're going to take the time and create a plan for how we're going to need to restructure our society and our economy in order to meet that second demand. And there's a lot of details to go into about the Citizens Assembly. It's a fascinating subject. The Citizens Assembly is not a new idea. It's been applied in several countries around the world, and it's been proven as an effective way to get around issues that politicians are just not able to address. So essentially what we're doing is we're bypassing the bullshit in Congress, and we're re-democratizing our government, because we don't believe that the problem can just be fixed with the system that we have as it is now. So we can go into that more later, because I'm sure there will be a lot of questions about that. The fourth demand is really about fairness and our relationship with other countries and other communities around the world. And it's based around the recognition that we're really all in this together. We're not going to be able to save ourselves and sacrifice some other group of people, and nor would we want to ethically, of course. So the fourth demand is really about fixing our own situation first, getting the United States and our communities to net zero by 2025, and then providing the tools and the support that's necessary to allow other countries on the basis of fairness and equity to draw down their emissions and their economies to net zero as well. I think the idea behind this is basically that we're not on an equal footing here with other countries, and it's unfair to make the same demand of India, that they draw down in the same way that we do, right? Because our lifestyles and our society have been, and our quality of life have been supported by the fossil fuel economy. Other countries are trying to get to our level, and it's really not fair to sort of cut them off at the knees and require them to make the same kind of sacrifices that we are. I don't know about that last one, but that's what I got for now. I don't know how long that was.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Daniel. Brilliant first shot.
Yeah, I could workshop that the fourth demand some.
Yeah, great. I mean, let's see what other sort of points people might want to make. Does someone want to add anything to that? in terms of how they explain it or justify it.
The fourth demand, or like any of them, or like go through the whole thing?
Any of them. Any of them.
I guess so. I mean, Daniel does a great job all the time. I think for the beyond politics, as far as like the redemocratization, I would like to say something about like snatching power back that has been stolen from us.
Okay, so just role play it then. Just role play your point.
So citizens' assemblies are essentially true democracy, because we don't have democracy in this country. We're, again, lied to and given the illusion of it. And we go and have this like grand show of having elections, but everything's already picked out for us, right? It's not real choice. We're given the illusion of choice. So it pacifies us into not doing anything. Citizens' assemblies, however, is a way to seize power back that has been stolen from us, that we didn't even know was taken from us. And essentially people, just everyday people, because everyday people we know can make good decisions with good information. We haven't been given good information, and citizens' assemblies would both ensure that we are, and place trust in everyday people to make good decisions based on that information with the interest of us in mind. So it's not elites, it's not billionaires. It takes care of the campaign finance reform issue, because it's not about corporations buying people out. People will be chosen by sortition, much like the way juries are chosen. Everyone has a civic duty, and they will be serving their civic duty and that role when it comes to them. And it is essentially the best version of a representative democracy that we could possibly have, because obviously, as we have seen in many various vectors, the billionaires in our government are not working on our behalf. They're working on behalf of the lobbies and the corporations and, whatever, these multinationals. We need people representing us. And the only people who can represent us is us, hence citizens' assemblies. We're also not saying that, it should be activists, or like we're not going to be, we have to be on the front lines, just everyday people, and that is the way we are going to transition power back from this centralized, toxic, corrupt government, and distribute it amongst the people who will care best for us because they are of us.
Yeah, great. So anyone else want to add 1 or 2 points to any of those four things? Say me or something, because I can't see everyone.
I think Guido was saying.
Guido, yeah.
Yeah, to tell the truth, like one of the things we've seen, like these pro forma declarations of climate emergency, which is kind of like the most useless thing when a government says there's an emergency and doesn't do anything. So I think it's important to emphasize it's more than just saying, I declare an emergency, but actually proactively engaging with society to make people, help people understand in real terms, like, what is this emergency? What does this mean for your life? Because it's going to be impossible to make these huge changes in society unless the society largely understands why it's necessary, right? And the same thing with the second one, like act now, because we've had like all these promises to achieve a solution in 40, 50 years. They're basically an excuse not to do anything while they're in office right now. So we have to have like real commitments today, because anything else is basically just like passing the buck. And that's part of like also goes to number 3, which is why like we've had 40 years of promises and failure, and it's just like, what are you going to do? We're going to have this rebellion, and then we're going to accept your promise that you're going to do something about it? No, there has to be like a substantive change in the political, I don't even say system, the political reality, right? And a huge part of that for me is like letting, the people should decide their own fate, basically, because that's what we're talking about right now is the fate of our society. And we all should have a say in that. Aside, we all know that like the whole political class is, corrupted by money, corrupted by the corporations, and that they have this really short-term horizon. They don't, if it happens outside when their term of office is over, it's someone else's problem. So, yeah, definitely. And on the fourth one, like one thing that I sometimes bring up is like the U.S. we're no longer the single largest current emitter, but we are the single largest cumulative emitter in history. Most of the carbon in the atmosphere is put there by the United States. So we owe a huge debt to the rest of the world. It's not just a matter of like helping out of the goodness of our heart. It's about like, doing the right thing and cleaning up your own mess, in my opinion.
Yeah, good. Okay, so what I think would be good is, if you don't mind, Daniel, is once you've heard those, like maybe you can go onto this document and below each point, 1, 2, 3, 4, you could just spend 5 minutes putting a few pointers, what are the arguments? Because really what we're developing here is a whole bunch of arguments, right? I mean, it's information, but I wasn't expecting this to be so rhetorical sort of thing, but it is, isn't it? This is quite a passionate bit of the Welcome to the Rebellion. This is the pitch. This is what it's about. We've got these 4 demands, and these are the arguments, right? So it doesn't have to be exclusive, Daniel. If you don't mind doing this would be great. And we'll do this as we go along because we want to capture these points. I just want to help myself, but I just want to add 2 things to what you've both said. I think like tell the truth means to tell people what's happening in everyday language, in everyday terms, if you see what I mean. What it means is your kids aren't going to get an education. You're going to lose your pension. The economy is going to collapse. You're not going to have any money. It's going to be as miserable as hell, and everyone's going to be stressed out. Do you see? And that's just the start. You see what I mean? So you this is what the government needs to tell people, not some scientific speak about 2050. They need to tell people it's going to be a pile of shit. And it already is. So it's going to be pile of shit times 10, right? So that's what's coming down the line. And the other thing I think that's important to say is about, obviously there's this big, we all aware, like there's this big debate around the role of justice and what have you. And the argument here is you can talk about as justice as much as you like, but justice basically comes through democratic control. When the people decide, then you get justice, and you don't get justice until the people decide. So if you're interested in justice, then that's what the Citizens' Assembly is. It's giving the power to the people, and the people know what justice looks like. It's the elites that are preventing justice in terms of fairness. And that goes on to point 4, which is, we're not here to create a transformation that's going to benefit the rich. We're here to create a transformation which has justice at the heart of it, which is what 4 is saying, without like doing all the specifics. So, as I'm sure you're aware, you're going to get some questions around that. So, maybe we talk about that more next week. Okay, so there we go. Everyone's really convinced, hopefully. So let's do, I don't want to get to this. We're only on page 6 of 30. So anyway, let's do another one, which is let's describe the Citizens' Assembly in a little more detail. Citizens' Assembly is quite, a lot of people know what telling the truth is about. People can get their heads around reducing carbon emissions. Citizen Assembly is a whole new concept for a lot of people. And, as I said, it's really empowering when people know about it. But obviously, there's things to be said. So Guido, if you want to do this bit, we'll just everyone read through it. And then you can do 3 or 4 minutes on it, yeah? Again, don't worry about covering everything. Just get a feel for it. Okay, so we're going to read this bit. Okay, do you want to give that a shot then, Guido?
Sure. So this is kind of just like you're kind of like explaining to the audience, or kind of trying to give arguments for, flesh out what these things
Yeah,
are,
so
right?
it's a section on the citizen assembly. So you imagine standing up and going, right, I'm Guido, I'm telling you about citizen assemblies. Off you go.
Okay, cool. All right, so I want to talk a little about the third demand for a citizens assembly, and what is that, and why are we asking for this, basically. I think a major part of this call for a citizens assembly comes from recognizing the fact that our political system, as it's constituted, is basically incapable of solving this problem, right? It's got a demonstrated history of failing to solve it, and the issue has become so politicized that just the idea of trying to solve this problem through the political system is it's like a non-starter. So what we have is, like, two parties. They've all got their own backers and their own donors, and they've all got their own particular interests, and it's just trying to solve it through that way is like going to be a mess. So what we're trying to do is say, we don't have the time, to kind of force through this political stalemate. What we've got to do is create a way that we can solve this problem together, collectively. And to do that, we have to have people who are interested in solving it, because politicians, they have, the biggest priority is getting those donations to get reelected. And they've just got to balance all these competing interests. Whereas the people themselves, we're the ones who are concerned with our own fate, right? We don't have to worry about, getting reelected. What we're worried about is, like, what's this mean for us? What's going to happen to my kids? So this is where the center of decision making should happen. And that's what we're doing. We're proposing creating this assembly of ordinary citizens, almost like a direct democracy, but selected at random, kind of like jury duty. And this assembly of citizens would basically be presented with all the evidence by the scientific experts. It would have access to all the resources it needs to learn about and understand the implications of this problem for everyday people's lives. And then it would be empowered to make a plan of how to proceed. And this is very important because it's not a solution that's coming through a single political party that's subject to opposition from another political party. These assemblies, when they've been used before to solve political questions, they have strong buy-in from the whole population because they come from the whole population. So something like that.
Yeah, great. So one or two people add 1 or 2 points. Just say if you want to speak.
I guess I would say, so we know that our government lacks the agility and the integrity that we need to address the complex questions and the rapid actions we're going to need to address climate collapse and social collapse. So we have to have citizens assemblies in place with all the details that Guido said that I will not get into, because we can offer the integrity, because we're not worrying just about, again, the scope of the next election, but we're looking at it in terms of generational lifespans and what's good for us coming down the road. And so we can give them the integrity of the decision making through sortation and our decisions, and we can give them the mandate so that they can act with agility, because we still need the government in all of its complexity and what it can bring about. We need that apparatus, but we just need us at the head of it.
Yeah, great. One other person add a bit?
I would like to say something, if I may.
Yeah.
I would add something about politicians working within a flawed system, because I feel like we don't want to say, oh, politicians, they only care about themselves and blah, 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 blah. Just mentioning that it's not their fault and they're working within a flawed system, and we don't blame them for that.
Okay, translate it into role play then. You just say it how you'd say it.
So politicians, through no real fault of their own, are not really good at are not very good at doing things that could, that look beyond their terms, or that could end up costing a lot of money, because it will not help them to get reelected. And sadly, that is what politicians have to care most about. And again, it's not their fault. They're working within a flawed system that focuses on reelection rather than on solving long-term issues.
Yeah, great. So yeah, there's a bunch of points there. I would, there's two things I would add, which is, and I think this is quite an important point, is Extinction Rebellion is not about having activists tell America what they should do. We're not in the business of telling people what to do. We're in the business of creating the political space so the people themselves can decide what to do, right? They decide, because it's their country. It's everyone's country. It's not just the country doesn't belong to activists, doesn't belong to politicians, it doesn't belong to the billionaires. It belongs to the people of America. So people of America should decide what needs to happen. And I think this is, this ties in again with this argument with the radical left and the traditional authoritarian slant, as it were, amongst activists, of saying, people, that sort of patronizing sort of slant activists have, which is, we know best, you're crap, and get with the program. That's not what we're saying. We're saying it's a problem and the people need to sort it out. And this second thing, which isn't in here, I think could be said, it's a minor point, but it's a major political point, is this citizens' assembly is going to be legally binding, right? Because if you actually research the history of it, usually what happens is, like in the UK, they're going to have a citizens' assembly. It's for 2050. They're going to get the report, put it in the drawer, get the PR from it, and That's not what we're saying. The government has to be legally obliged to follow the will of the people. And, this will of the people, big thing in America, big thing in the UK is in terms of the tradition. So you're sort of tapping into that popular democracy sort of feel for it. So Guido, is your little action point then? Do you want to just look at this and get a little bit of just feel free to add a few bullet points as well from what you've said and what other people have said. I'm assuming that, yes, this is being recorded, isn't it? So at some point, Tatiana, could you make sure at the beginning of this document there's a link to this video, because I think people will read it and then they can come onto this and go, oh, wonder how Guido put that. and they can look at it. Okay, so let's move on to something else. I'm going to give you a little taste here. I think obviously we're going to be here for hours if we go through all the bits, but I think what I'm starting to think in my head is, I think we've discussed this with this welcome to the rebellion thing. I think you're all hopefully going to move towards Dolly's idea, which is to give it to a whole bunch of people all at the same time on Zoom. So it's not like just 4 people, in Iowa or something. It's going to be like 30, 40 people from 3 or 4 groups around the country. And in which case, you don't all have to know the whole thing. Like you can, let's say there's 6 of you that decide to do this talk, because not everyone needs to do this talk in the last analysis. Then you can decide amongst the 6 of you who's going to do which bit. And then you can research your bit and practice it. So again, like, if it's Guido and Dan, if you're going to do the citizen assembly, then you could just create a Zoom between the 2 of you and say for an hour on Saturday afternoon, we're going to get together and we're going to basically talk it through, a bit like what we've done now. So Guido, spends 10 minutes saying what it's about, and then Dan goes, yeah, that was great, but you forgot about this. Do you see what I mean? And then you do it again, so that you work in pairs on a particular section of it. So and then you won't need me. Okay, so let's pick another little bit. I'm going to skip the aims and principles just to try and get to another bit, but that's always fun because they're all quite contradictory, aren't they? Anyway, yeah, let's go on to civil disobedience. So I'm gonna Nick, I know you're going to be on Gene Sharp, so hopefully you're going to be XR America's specialist on the 200 different methods of civil disobedience or something he's got in his books, hasn't he? So Nick, would you mind summarizing this? I'll just give us a minute or two just to read through what it says, okay? Is that all right, Nick, by the way? Sorry, I can't see you.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, great, thanks. Yeah, so we'll just read through it again. Okay, off you go then.
All right, so, yep. Our twin tasks in Extinction Rebellion America is mass mobilization and mass civil disobedience. That means that we'll be seeding chapters all over this country focused on that aim of mass mobilization, mass civil disobedience. And the model that we've chosen is the civil resistance model, right? Which entails that we need thousands of people risking their freedom and their liberty in defense of their beliefs. And to do this at the center of power in Washington, D.C., at the Capitol. So that means our target is to get 50,000 arrestables in DC, committing civil disobedience and having 1 million people in support of those actions. And it also entails that it must be peaceful and nonviolent. And so we have a ratio, a golden ratio, if you will. For every one person risking arrest, there is 20 people in support. You know, we're not everyone is privileged enough to risk arrest. So we're asking people to also step up in support of these kind of actions. And so another reason for a reason for being nonviolent is that we need Erica Chenoweth's work on nonviolent civil resistance has shown that that we need 3.5% of the population in order to achieve systemic change. And nonviolence is effective in that it enables the entire community to be able to get involved in this kind of action. You know, women, grandmothers, children, and in violent uprising, it tends to be just young men throwing rocks. And there's another element, which it has to be respectful, and yeah. So I guess where am I going with this? Non-violent. Yeah. Let's
Right.
see. And yeah, I was just gonna add that, you know, it's not like a big ask, right? We're just asking people to stand in the middle of the road, you know, just their mind and their body, some kind of low level entry kind of action, and refuse to move. It's pretty simple. It's what Rosa Parks did. It's what Gandhi did. Some really simple, non-violent, civil disobedient action. Yeah, that's about it. What I got.
Great, great. So two people add a few bits to it then. Who wants to add a little bit to it? And again, don't say what you would say, just say it as you would. Yeah, I can't see everyone, but so just say you want to speak. Dan first.
I would add that for myself, I feel a spiritual and moral motive to be nonviolent, but that we also have important strategic reasons why we're nonviolent. And part of that is to kind of jujitsu the overwhelming force that the United States government has at its disposal. It would really love to characterize us as terrorists, and they're going to do that anyway. But the more that we can make that label look absurd by our respect and our nonviolence, the more that their overreaction and their violent reaction is going to play into our favor.
Yeah, great. One more person had something. Tatiana, yeah.
Yeah, I feel bad. I'm trying to like hold space for other people to talk, but okay. So what we know about nonviolent civil disobedience is that it is far more effective than violent rebellion ever has been. So like the statistics are something like 67% of violent rebellion, only 33% of violent rebellions are successful, but what usually ends up being ushered in on the back end is something even more authoritarian and fascist than what they were fighting against. And 67% of nonviolent transformation of society is successful and sustainable, and that's what we need. You know, when it comes to the idea of civil disobedience and everybody needing to participate, it doesn't mean you have to be an arrestable, because obviously people of privilege should be leveraging that privilege on behalf of all of us. But you know, they said, we know what's coming down the road. Like, you've listened to the talk, you know what the statistics are, in a much more profound and intimate way than most people are aware of. But, you know, if you're familiar with like the Children's March during the Civil Rights Movement, where thousands of kids got arrested, and, you know, finally a reporter asked a child, right, you know, why are you doing this? Like, aren't you afraid, aren't you afraid of getting hurt? And the child replied, you know, they're going to hurt us anyway, right? We know that regardless, no matter what happens, it's not going to go well if we do nothing, but if we do something, we have a chance to affect change. And the nonviolence and the consistent and persistent civil disobedience, and doing it in a polite and respectful way, as like to Daniel's point, it will draw out the truth of the state and the fascism of the state and the sadism of the state, but it will also, in that act, unveil what they really are and show people the truth. And that truth can win us not just popular support, but also support from people in government itself who will like abandon their loyalties to either join us or at least support us, because that kind of action and that kind of sacrifice is what foments inspiration and solidarity. And that's what we need, right? This is a movement for everyone in the country, not for activists, not for billionaires, not for elites. It's for the people. So we need to be nonviolent to also like allow access to everyone feeling comfortable to engage in the movement. And that means like, you know, moms coming out with their kids and, you know, it just being a sort of a cross section of America kind of event. And not just some like radical fringe, whatever that they can paint and pigeonhole like they're going to try to do anyway. Because if you're just seeing like moms and teachers and, you know, like people in your community showing up for this, it becomes an everyman movement because we need all the people with us doing this. And we have to be the vanguard and show them that it's not that difficult. It's just a matter of sitting in the road.
Yeah, great. So, you know, I think we sort of, you know, as you go through this stuff, you can sort of see some underlying themes here, right? And, you know, a crucial underlying theme here is this is a popular mass movement, right? This isn't just the same usual suspects doing the same usual stuff with the same usual slogans. This is something totally different because the situation's totally different, right? This isn't just a political issue. This is everything forever, and it involves everyone forever. So we need to go to everyone about it. You know, it's that sort of thing, isn't it? And the key thing about nonviolence is it provides a way in which everyone can participate in some way. It's not elitist. And this is a good way, you know, if you get some bright spark, you know, violence works guy standing up, this is the reply, which is that actually engaging in, you know, aggressive, macho, you know, riotous behavior is completely justified, but it's not smart because it excludes the people that are actually going to make the change. And, you know, that's no good, right? So I think what I'd like you to do, Nick, on this section, and obviously you know, if you read Gene Sharp, you'll in his introduction, he gives a whole bunch of pragmatic reasons why nonviolence works. And if people don't know Gene Sharp, he's the godfather, you know, of civil disobedience theory. And his approach, and you know, there's big academic debates around it, but you know, his approach is you don't need to like the buggers. You know, this isn't about morality. This is a methodology of bringing about success. And that's one of the reasons why it's spread around the world. It doesn't have a cultural, spiritual basis, which it did beforehand. And this is potentially the way to sell it to lots of different groups in America. And, you know, maybe, Nick, you can just do a checklist of the main reasons why it works. So, for instance, number one, it enables the opposition to save face, right? You're not humiliating them. Number two, it encourages the security forces to defect or at least become disillusioned. You know, point three, it's low cost to entry. Anyone can do it. As Tatiana said, there's that nice line of, you know, your grandmother can do it. You know, a 14-year-old can do it, right? Anyone can do it. It's popular, it's democratic. It's like living our own values, if you see what I mean, blah, blah. So, and there's probably a bunch of other ones. But, you know, there's probably 4 or 5 key arguments there. And I think I did a bunch of arguments in the video I did. I don't know if you know that. I did a 1.5 hour video going through all the arguments for all the different things. So again, maybe Tatiana, you can put a link to those videos at the beginning of the document, because as I said, it's going to be pretty straightforward going through this, but it's going to be quite scary when someone asks you a really tricky question and you'll go, oh, well, you know, I'll pass it on to my partner.
Which video are you,
yeah.
are you referring to specifically? It's a 1.5 video?
I did a 1.5 hour video, but Jamie split it up into 6 videos, and it's basically all the arguments that you have. So this is the bread and butter of what you're doing, right? I mean, it's easy enough to make a presentation, but it's when they say this, what do you say back? And obviously we've all got our ideas about what we say, but the name of the game is to know all the arguments, right? Because you think, oh, citizen assembly, you know, they involve people. And then you forget to say, actually, you know, when people see people like me, then they're more likely to accept it. Oh, I hadn't thought of that one. You see what I mean? So you just want to like get the whole overview. So Nick, in terms of action points, are you okay just doing a little bit of an edit on that one?
Yeah, sure thing.
Yeah, and you know, feel free to put a Gene Sharp quote in. Which books have you got, by the way?
Let me show you here. It's The Politics of Nonviolent Action, Power and Struggle, and The Methods of Nonviolent Action, part 1 and 2.
Yeah. Great stuff. Great stuff. It always sends a little shiver down my spine when I do those. Because when I was like 19, I went to London. I didn't have an idea about nonviolence. And one of these really, you know, intellectual types turned up to the meeting, and he had his free Gene Sharp books, and he was a bit like, "This is it." It was like the Bible, and I was really intimidated by him because he was like one of these, you know, I know my stuff types. So yeah, so we can look forward to you doing a nice 3-hour lecture on Gene Sharp in a fortnight, right? All right, so where should we go? Are you okay to go for another 15 minutes? And then I'll try and include Jamie and Adelaide and Donald, yeah? In some way, anyway. All right, so mass mobilization, fear of change. Yeah, so there's a few bits and pieces on all that. I'm going to move over. Okay, so that's the end of the first section about movement and movements and stuff. Okay, so let's go on to structure. Okay, yeah, let's do structure then. Adelaide, are you okay on this one? Hello?
Yep.
Yeah. Have I pronounced your name right? Is that right?
Yes.
Phew, good. Trying to get through the whole meeting without pronouncing someone's name wrong, so that's good.
I'm sorry.
All right, so
Not to be rude, can I just interject? Jamie has a hard stop in 14 minutes. Can we have her go first so that
oh yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Okay, we'll come to you in a second, Adelaide, if that's all right.
That is absolutely fine.
Okay, Jamie, so I don't know how long this section is. Oh, it's not that long. Okay, well, let's just read this a little bit, and then you can have a quick go at this, yeah? Okay, we'll just read it first. Okay, I'm just checking. Yeah, okay, so do that little bit.
So XR has the principle of the shared accountability and power. We are a decentralized structure, which means that there's no hierarchy. We all take on the responsibilities that we're sort of called to, or that we might be skilled at or gifted at. And sorry, my son's getting wildly back. This kind of keeps it derails sort of that hierarchy power situation that could develop within organizations. It allows for people to sort of bow out from certain responsibilities when they may have to tend to other things within their life, and other people to step forward when they have extra time. It also allows for us to work within working groups at the local, state, and national level. What else? That's all I got. Just be honest.
Great. Okay. Anyone want to add anything to that?
Sure. I guess I could say it's important to keep in mind that organization that doesn't check for some kind of structure or actively create some kind of structure will default into the structures that some kind of hierarchy of power and dominance. And so we need to actively make sure that we prevent that from happening. And so that's why we have the principle actively work for shared and accountable power. We will make sure that there's responsibility throughout the organization.
Yeah, great. So yeah, pretty straightforward, but obviously a really important point. So Jamie, if you think of anything you want to add to that, your action point is to mess around with that section, yeah? So maybe you check around with a few people or something. I think in the
I get a lot of great ideas by actually watching other people's HFE talks and listening to other people talk as well.
yeah, exactly. So if you think there's something, again, I think having a bunch of, I mean, personally, I think this would be better if it was laid out as a checklist, right? When you're talking about the hierarchy of power, mention this, number one, number two, number three. So you've got a checklist of what you're saying. So, you know, maybe you can present it like that. You know, these are the key elements. Okay, so let's do another little bit before we finish, yeah?
While you're looking through for your bit, I can bubble that feedback to Domio, and we could work on transforming that to a checklist. So I'll take that
Yeah.
as a point.
Yeah, and it might be worth looking at the videos I did to just make sure you've got a comprehensive list. I mean, not that mine's comprehensive, by the way, but you know, we can sort of add to them.
You know, I definitely agree that like outline format and bullet pointing is easier, giving people like the nuggets of information that so they have it, and then it allows them to personalize it with their personalities in their presentation. So I love that. Yes.
Is this list in the Rebel Manual? Where can we find this?
This is the Welcome to the Rebellion training. I will drop a link for you right now, but you should all, I think, have access to it. Hang on 1 second, I'll grab it for you.
Awesome, thank you.
My pleasure, my love.
Okay, so
All right.
Adelaide, do you want to let's do this little bit. So this is describing the self-organizing system. So we'll start by playing the same game, okay? And then we'll go through mandates and roles. It's where it gets pretty like nerdy, isn't it?
You know what? I'm sorry to interrupt. I just realized that the version we have access to is from an earlier date. You have a later version, and I don't know
Yeah,
what that is.
Domio sent it me today,
Okay.
so Domio should have it.
Can you share that?
Or maybe Michelle did. Either Domio or Michelle.
Can you drop a link to that in our chat so that everybody can have it?
Yeah, I will. Before we finish, I'll get rid of this and then I'll put the link in the chat.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll just read through this section then, yeah? Okay, is that okay? So we've gone down to what could their purpose be, yeah? So do you want to have a little stab at that then, Adelaide, introducing those issues?
Sure. Could you?
Oh, should I go back up to the top?
Yeah, I can't remember all of it.
Don't worry, just give a sort of flavor of it, yeah.
All right. So similarly to birds, we all have to agree on certain things so we can be cohesive. So what are we trying to achieve, and how are we going to make decisions? Those are the things we need to agree on. This allows us to make decisions effectively and coordinate across large groups of people without any one person or small group being in charge. If you don't agree on these sort of basic things, then you can organize, and then you have the perfect organizational, then you have a perfect organizational structure, and will still, if you don't agree on these most basic things, you can have the most you can have the most perfect organizational structure and it will still fail. You can compare it to playing a game. If a group agrees to get together to play football, or I guess soccer for us, then when someone comes along with a hockey stick, it's not going to work out. Earlier in this training, we talked about what it means for us in XR to play the same game, and we all have in common any ideas as to what that game could be. So the first really big thing that we have to deal with is distributed authority. In XRA's SOS, in XRA, SOS, or self-operating system. Is that right?
Self-organizing, yeah.
Organizing. In XRA's SOS, or self-organizing system, autonomy is distributed. And that means that people do have power, but it's not concentrated to a few. So it's distributed across groups and roles within different groups. So ideally, everybody in the group will have a role. Power is essential, and we can't have empowerment without power. It's right there in the name. But no one singular person has power over another person, nor over the whole organization or group. Everyone is the same in the SOS system, so that mandates and autonomy. This is another important part. The self-organizing system encourages the autonomy of individuals and teams. What differentiates our roles is determined by these mandates. First of all, and this is very, very important, decisions shouldn't be made in large groups. It can make sense to get a lot of people together for trainings and events, or actions, but organizing is definitely not an effective way to make decisions. In fact, I can't think of a single person who enjoys large, long, inefficient meetings. They are draining, they're boring, they're disconnecting, and people understandably don't want to come back after having been to one of those. Instead, chapters, teams, circles, whatever you want to call it, decide on who should research and seek advice to make the best decisions they're able to make within a specific, clearly defined areas. And then the group as a whole would consent to that person making it happen. So does a team know what decisions they're allowed to make? So how does a team know what decisions they're allowed to make within a clearly defined mandate? With a clearly defined mandate. A mandate usually describes the purpose of a group and its accountabilities, or what it can be expected to do to fulfill its purpose. Let's take a clear example from a social media team. Imagine you have a social media team in your local chapter. Here is the for reference. Obviously,
Yeah,
I wouldn't
great.
say that here's the for reference part. I would actually put in a...
Yeah, that's great. So what you'll notice there is usually this is the bit where everyone falls asleep, right? Because it's boring, right? But the way to, for the average person, I mean, I find it fascinating, but I'm weird, right? But like for the average person, how do you get this across? So you notice that it's put across quite skillfully, because what happens is you describe the concept, you take the concept like a mandate. That's step one. Step two is you describe it in everyday terms, like a mandate, just translate it into Anglo-Saxon, everyday street English. And then number three is you give an example of how that works in real life, so people understand it in their own real life. And obviously you might want to add one or two examples from your own experience, like, you know, like rules, like everyone thinks rules, what's that? Oh yeah, that's like playing football, right? If you haven't, you know, if someone starts kicking the ball, you know, to the end of the pitch and then says they've scored a goal, well, they haven't, because they've got to get it in the goal, right? So you've got to have the rule, and everyone goes, yeah, you've got to have rules. So that's the way in which that's structured. Okay, so I'm just going to get out of this.
Really quickly, can I just say something about that
Yeah.
that I came up with to explain, or at least for my head? One of the points I would make in the larger presentation is that, like, while we know that two heads are better than one, we also know that too many cooks spoil the soup. So, you know, we want people to be making their own decisions and everyone to participate, but we have to give them mandates so that we don't have 18 cooks trying to make the same soup. And instead, like, you two go off and make the salad, and you two go off and do this, and you two, like, go make the main entree, and then we can have, like, a full meal that is not, you know, overly engineered and takes forever to decide on.
Exactly. So it is quite a complicated thing to communicate, particularly for people that have read too many books that get really intellectual about it. But, you know, one of the things we found is really difficult is this issue of hierarchy. You say, okay, so we're not into hierarchy, but you need to explain what that means. What that means is you aren't having people being abusive to other people through telling them what to do all the time, right? But having no hierarchy doesn't mean decisions aren't made. It does mean decisions are made, but they're made in a distributed way where people are clear about it, and there's clear points of decision in the system, if you see what I mean. So it doesn't mean that people get to never make a decision, because you see what I mean. There's a big problem we have in the UK, as you may know. People are always shifting who makes decisions because no one wants to be accused of being dominating, right? Well, that's just the way it is. You know, someone has to make that decision. It's so, yeah. But let's leave it like that. So hopefully that's giving you a bit of a flavour of, you know, what this talk is up to. So just to reiterate, I think it would be useful for Tatiana to make those links, put those links in, suggest it's put into a more bullet point fashion, and obviously we can add to it. And then maybe, I don't know where you guys are up to, but I think you should be moving towards some sort of specialization. So, I mean, it's important everyone knows the general gist, but, you know, it might be, you know, Dan particularly likes doing the Heading for Extinction talk, and Guido's a real organization man and he wants to do the, you know, the Welcome to Rebellion. So you can start specializing and then get into small groups and practice it, you know, the different sections. And practicing means role playing, right? So as I said, you get together, one person takes a section, they read it out, or they say how they would say it with some notes in front of them. And then the other person, you know, mentions, oh, you forgot to mention this. Oh, right, yeah. And then the other person role plays it. And then the person that's not speaking gives them feedback. It's quite fun. Yeah, so maybe Tatiana, you can feed that into the system in so much as you're coordinating or whatever. Is there any, sorry?
Can you drop that link just before we run
off?
Oh,
yeah, sorry, I'll just do that now. Hopefully I can work it out to do that.
It's okay. If not, I can get it from Jomio. And
yeah, it's okay. I've got it. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I've just put it in there.
Thank you.
So what I think, I mean, by all means, send me some feedback by email if you wish, but my feeling is you guys can get on with that, and we'll move on next week to training coordinators. And I think there's one other training after that. And after that, we can move on to, by that time, you'll probably know the sort of tricky questions you're starting to get. And then we can do 2 or 3 sessions on questions from hell sort of thing, or people from hell, depending on how you look upon it, and how to deal with that. And then, you know, you're ready to start training the next generation. Okay, so is there any clarifying questions on that before we finish?
Sure.
Yeah.
When we're going through the Welcome to Rebellion training, compared to the Heading for Extinction talk, my understanding is we want to stay pretty close to the script for Heading for Extinction, but for the Welcome to Rebellion, I guess there's more room for us to kind of interpret it our own way, give it in our own words, or either or works, script or.
Yeah, definitely. But I think you've got those core points. This is the advantage of having checklist, is you've got that checklist, and then you can communicate it in terms of your own experience, you know. Like we're going to have rules in the group because rules are necessary. I was in a group without any rules, and you just tell a little story about why you're shit sort of thing. And then you go back on. Yeah, so that's right. So obviously you want to make sure you cover the arguments, I guess. Yeah. Is there any, yeah, Tatiana, yeah.
To ensure that because I would like to have checklists as much as possible throughout all documents, not just this one. So is that okay to like widen that feedback? So like we can have a blurb explaining things, and wherever possible, give just people bullet points.
Yeah. Well, Domio's in the dominant position, as it were, talking about hierarchies on that one. So you'll have to negotiate with her, but I'm sure she'll be cool.
Actually, we also kind of already have that negotiation about the mass mobilizer manual itself. So she's doing the verbs, and I'm doing like the outline structure, because I like bullet points where I can just get to the information I need. So we've already kind of worked that out, and so I feel like she will be supportive on this.
Yeah, and maybe you can put something at the beginning of the document about how to use this document, so people to respond to Donald's point, which is this document gives you the points to be made, but it's up to you to interpret those in terms of your own experience and life story, if you see what I mean. So that's the nature, you know, that's the balance between autonomy and having a standard presentation, which, you know, is always a little bit of a tricky one. Yeah, and if any other comments by anyone before we finish? Yeah, Guido.
I'm just curious. So is Domio going to be putting together like that bullet list of key concepts under each of the, or who's doing that?
So Domio and I are working on the mass mobilizer manual. She's she's done the outline structure of like what we need to do in what order, and she's doing little blurbs that explain like sort of the overall concept, and I'm doing the outline bullet point, get into the details from like the notes of say this, don't forget this, these are the pitfalls for every section, because I think it's good to know what you're supposed to do, but you also need to know what not to do to define that other boundary, right? And so you know like where you're the field in which you're playing, and that's what we're working on putting together now, because you know that's what our team would have benefited from. So that's why we're asking for your input, because we've gone through the training and we can make this a robust resource first and foremost for ourselves, because we need this, and then also as a support to the next surges of mobilizers coming through.
Yeah, great. And as I said, you know, in 2 or 3 weeks, when we've got through all the super basics, then we can move on to difficult questions, stroke people, and that's the juicy bit, right? This is the basic arithmetic, and we're going to get onto calculus later on, but and yeah, you know, and then I think Tatiana, it'd be good to have a document on that, you know, an appendix sort of thing, like this is all fine, but what happens when people ask, here's the top 20 nightmare questions, if you see what I mean. And, you know, there are only so many questions people ask, which is why I'm quite relaxed on it all now, because I've been doing it for a year, if you see what I mean. But, you know, so it's not like you're going to endlessly get weird new questions. There's 6 or 7 key questions which people ask, and once you've nailed them, then, you know, you're on the way to feeling like, you know what your job's like, as you keep saying, or wanting to get towards. Okay, anything else before we have a final checkout? Yeah.
One more
go on,
thing
Anthony.
real quick. You mentioned how like at some point maybe Guido would want to we would want to specialize. Guido might want to do heading, I mean the Welcome to Rebellion. Daniel might want to specialize in heading for extinction. Does that mean at some point we might not want to do the current system we have where it's like 2 heading for extinction talks per mobilizer per week, recommended, give or take, and then maybe just have some mobilizers do just heading for extinction, and then some mobilizers do just coordinator training, nonviolent civil disobedience training, the other trainings?
Well, it's a balance, obviously, right? You don't want to get held up because no one wants to do the heading for extinction talk, right? On the other hand, you don't want everyone to have to do everything. So it's a balance between the two. So the main idea is you're setting up like a chapter a week, as it were, as a team or as an individual or some. So, if hopefully people will be in teams of 4 rather than 2 sooner rather than later. And then once you're in a team of 4, then you can specialize. I mean, obviously at the beginning, while we're doing things on Zoom, then obviously there can be quite a lot of specialization because maybe 2 or 3 teams can work together or something. But yeah, it's a balance to be worked out, right? Sometimes it's really obvious someone's really good at something. So you don't have to be really like pretend someone isn't really good at something. If someone's really good at something, then just tell them, right? I mean, the name of the game is to get the job done here, right? So on the other hand, if you really hate something, then don't do it, right? There's certain things that people want to do. So just be honest with each other about it. I mean, we're all team and all that business. Yeah. And if Guido, did you want to come back on that, or?
It was a quick one. There's something mentioned earlier about I forget who brought it up. Are we have people been considering pooling, like new member applicants and doing this welcome call across states or something like that? Was that the concept that was being introduced earlier? I don't know.
Sorry, say that again. We didn't quite get that.
Well, obviously, all the people that are coming into new chapters are going to go through this welcome to the rebellion training. But there was something I don't know if there's something alluded to bringing in people from multiple chapters to a single training.
Oh yeah. This is Dolly's idea that while we're all stuck on Zoom anyway, she's got this idea that 2 or 3 new chapters do a welcome to the rebellion together. So let's say you've got 3 new chapters on the East Coast for the sake of argument. Like, it doesn't matter that the one's in New York, one's in Florida, one's in South Carolina. They all do it together. So the benefit of that is there's 25 people on the call for the sake of argument, right? And the big advantage of that is the psychology of, oh, right, this is something going on, rather than, you've got South Miami, 3 people in the room hearing about, you know what I mean? It's a little bit like, what is this? So yeah, I think that's
it's great. Yeah.
And it's exciting, isn't it, when you've got a whole bunch. I mean, I did a call the other day on the Midlands. I did an East Midlands heading for extinction talk, right, which is sort of like it's a big area, and there were 150 people on the call. So it felt like, yeah, this is it. Even though it's just yeah. So
was that recorded? Is there a recording to that?
Yeah, you see Dolly, she can give you recordings of stuff. Yeah. Tatiana.
I forgot my question. Recordings, Dolly. I was like trying to make an action point to remember that. Guido, can you remember to ask Dolly about that? Okay. Cross coordination. I don't remember. Never mind. I think we're done.
Yeah. We need to finish. I've got to go for my dinner. Let's have a checkout then. Nick, do you want to start and pass on to someone?
Yeah, great stuff. Thank you. I'm going to look through this extensively. Guido, give it a go.
Good.
Want to pass on to someone?
Don, can you go?
Me? Sure. I'm feeling better now, so that's good. And there is lots of stuff to do, lots of information to absorb even further. Let it settle in. And I'm gonna give the bathroom another shot after this. So yeah, Tatiana, go for it.
I just want to say that Like the simultaneously, for me at least, facilitating felt like the messiest and yet like the best training yet, because maybe it took me 3 trainings to finally like relax and not be so uptight about having everything go perfect. So having everything go haywire with my Wi-Fi and the meeting carrying on and all that, and embracing the suck like Daniel, encourages people to do so delightfully, was really good for me. So like now I can just like be myself and be messy and human and be better at it instead of uptight, hopefully. But thank you. Yeah, this is great. Adelaide, what are you thinking?
I lost my train of thought. Excuse me, I'm glad to have been here. I'm hungry. That's the problem. I'm hungry. I haven't eaten breakfast yet, so I'm excited to go eat something. How about, just need to scan down. Daniel, have you gone?
Yeah, I feel good. I feel a lot of warrior energy. I want to get in there. I love this team. I really appreciate your time and care and attention, Roger. That's really special and meaningful. So just thanks so much, everybody. I guess I think, Tatiana, you did check out, right?
I did, but you're all
Yeah,
I love you. Yeah, go ahead.
So it's just Roger, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, well, funny you should say that, Daniel, because I just make it up as I go along. So by design, because you can over-organize, you know what I mean? Come in and say, look, I know exactly what it is. And I told you that little routine, like if you sound like too authoritative, everyone starts going, oh my God. But like, I don't actually know quite what I'm doing here. But so I appreciate you all, you all doing it. And when you get to do this, then you'll be so much better than me. So that's good. And I'll see you all next week. Yeah, great. See you in a bit.
Bye.